The Douglas F4D Skyray flies for the U.S. Navy in War Thunder. Let's check it out. Anticipating progressive improvements in jet technology, the U.S. Navy issued a requirement in 1947 for a new jet-powered interceptor that would fly from carriers and could reach 50,000 feet in 5 minutes. These were pretty ambitious goals, but it was hoped that the research during the Second World War on swept and delta-wing designs would be the key to unlocking these new levels of performance. The Douglas Company offered the F4D, which was a pretty radical departure from other American designs at the time, and featured a rounded delta wing, side-mounted air intakes at the wing roots, and only a single jet engine. The first flight of the prototype took place in 1951, but there were a large number of problems encountered early on, which isn't really surprising considering the revolutionary nature of its design. Eventually, the plane entered service with the U.S. Navy in 1956 as the F4D-1 Skyray. The new plane surprised its pilots with its exceptional performance, and it became the first naval jet capable of breaking Mach 1 in level flight. It also carried an all-weather radar system, 4 20mm Colt cannons, radar-adjusted trajectory calculation for its unguided rockets, which was cutting-edge technology at the time, and the new Sidewinder missile. This combined weapons package represented a state-of-the-art integrated system, among the best and most advanced in the world when it was introduced. In fact, many of the design paradigms used in the F4D, with regards to its avionics systems integration and its weapons, would later become the norm for American second and third generation fighters. It wasn't just the technology that was a leap forward, as the performance was also a huge generational leap for the U.S. Navy, as the Skyray was the first carrier-capable jet to hold the world speed record, and the U.S. Navy's first supersonic aircraft. In 1962, when the U.S. military standardized its naming conventions, the jet was redesignated the F-6A, but it retained the Skyray name, and served the U.S. Navy until 1964. What we get in War Thunder is the F4D-1 Skyray, which does not have the F6A designation. It sits in the American tech tree in rank 6 at a battle rating of 9.3, off in the premium column. The plane carries the AN/APQ-50 radar set, which is a relatively basic second-generation radar system without too many advanced features. It can realistically detect targets out to around 20 kilometers, has basic IFF functionality, and an ACM boresight mode. The plane also gets a ballistics computer with the CCIP for its rockets and guns. Now for weapons, the Skyray gets 4 20mm Colt cannons with only 65 rounds of ammo per gun. This ends up draining relatively quick, and the guns are halfway outwards in the middle of the wings, so you might want to think about gun convergence. The external weapon loads are pretty basic, just rocket pods or sidewinders, but the plane does get custom loadout editing enabled by default. In real life, the plane could also carry bombs, but in War Thunder, no such luck, although you do get the CCIP for the rocket pods, so that's something. The guided missile the Skyray gets is the basic AIM-9B. This is an entry-level, rear-aspect air-to-air missile with a caged seeker on launch and pretty limited performance. It only has 10 Gs of pull and it loves to chase flares, but if you're picky with your shots, it's still a credible weapon. The flight performance of the F4D is just amazing for its battle rating. It has an excellent rate of climb, and it's pretty fast at altitude, but it's going to be subsonic basically all of the time. The plane can break Mach 1 if you climb to space and fly in a straight line for a few minutes, but you really won't have the opportunity to do that in any of War Thunder's game modes, so think of this as a subsonic jet that doesn't have to worry about a rip speed. The engine's pretty responsive, with really strong acceleration at low and medium speeds, but it starts hitting a wall at around 0.85 Mach. Also, the engine is crazy thirsty if you use the afterburner, so keep an eye on your fuel load. Now, when you get into a dogfight, that's when the F4D really opens up. The plane's enormous wing gives it great turn performance, and overall its maneuverability is just excellent. It feels a bit like flying the J-35A in that its Delta platform can give you some really insane UFO turns, but if you cut in too far, you're going to dump all of your airspeed and get yourself into a pretty low energy state very quickly. The controls lock up pretty bad above 800 kilometers an hour, which you can mitigate with the hydraulic boosters, but having the boosters equipped really leads to some pretty bad wing rip problems. The secret seems to be unequipping the boosters and using a combination of air brakes and combat flaps to help cut into a turn if you enter an engagement with too much speed. You can safely use combat flaps at basically any speed, and the air brakes are decent. So if you're careful in managing the afterburner, you can usually get into a good position after a merge, but it will take some practice to get used to this jet's handling. I flew it out at least a dozen times before I got a good feel for managing its airspeed. The performance of the F4D gives some reasonably good flexibility flying into air battles, kinda. If you get down-tiered, you can do low-level stuff like normal, or you can climb and use its radar to look for any stray bombers that got up-tiered, or you can prey in on enemy fighters that go up to try and do boom and zoom stuff. However, if you get up-tiered, which seems like it happens about 90% of the time, and you find yourself in a match up against semi-active radar missiles, flares, and 30G missiles, it's probably best to start low and try to fight at medium altitudes. You can catch just about any subsonic jet in a flat chase, but the F4D gets tiered into Mach 2 fighters pretty often, so a lot of stuff is going to just run away, and there won't really be anything you can do about it. The AIM-9Bs have very limited performance, and you have to remember that these things are very easy to dodge, and a lot of the stuff you end up fighting is going to have flares, so you're probably going to miss most of the shots you take with the AIM-9B, unless you're incredibly careful and only launch on people you've jumped by surprise. The 20mm cannons on the F4D hit pretty hard, but I don't know, I've just never been able to get a good feel for the Colts on any of the jets that have them. Sometimes it feels like my instincts for their ballistics are totally wrong, and sometimes they land exactly where I want them to. I really don't know why it seems to vary flight to flight. The key is to remember that while the ammo count is high, the ammo per gun is very low, so you won't have a lot of endurance in a gunfight. And if you have trouble tagging out a target, you might run out of ammo pretty quickly as you're spraying and praying. In terms of ground attack, the plane has the CCIP for its cannons and rocket pods, so if you want to, you can take this thing out as close air support or tag the bases in air battles. But with this thing's insane performance, ground pounding is very much a secondary role. This is a fighter, fly it like one. Visually, the Skyray is a really unique looking plane in that Delta Wing fighters have been somewhat rare in American service, so seeing something like this with the US Navy markings can look a little out of place, but not in a bad way. The curved wingtips are a little odd, but overall I really like the look of this jet, and it's definitely grown on me. Plus, there's an extra paint job or two, so that's not bad. Landing isn't difficult, and it probably won't even take any practice. You can drop gear and flaps safely at around 400 kilometers an hour, and the jet has an arrestor hook, just in case you get to do carrier stuff someday. But no drag chute or anything, so the landing run is going to be pretty long. The jet has a pretty low stall speed, and overall I'd consider the F4D pretty beginner-friendly in terms of its landing characteristics. The cockpit on this jet is wonderfully detailed and was surprisingly fun to fly in VR. The bracing didn't really get in the way as much as I expected, and despite not having much of a view backwards, I didn't find myself scrambling to figure out where enemy planes were too often. Overall, pretty good cockpit. To close out on the Douglas F4D-1 Skyray. This jet has a good engine with a powerful afterburner. It can take 4 air-to-air missiles, it has excellent maneuverability, and it gets a ballistics computer. However, its 4 missiles aren't great, it doesn't get any defensive systems of any kind, it doesn't have much ammo for its cannons, and its repair cost is frankly insane. The final verdict on the F4D-1 Skyray is that this plane is fun, and it's a great jet to get as an event reward since it's accessible to players who haven't grinded out the entire tech tree yet. But I think the repair cost is going to ruin it for a lot of players. A $20,000 repair bill in the current War Thunder economy, in a Missile Thunder tiered jet without flares or anything, almost feels like the snail is deliberately trolling us. Still, the plane itself flies great once you get used to its performance, and it's a lot of fun in matches. As always, thanks for watching.